Alright guys, welcome back to the shop. John here with John's Custom Saws. Got a good one for you today. We're going to pressure back test this ridiculous 084. Two-piece head, a lot of stuff going on here. So I'm going to use a Mighty Vac. We'll talk about other methods you can use, but if you're at all serious about doing these saw builds or small engine repair, you got to have something to check for air leaks. It's that simple. So I'll show you a couple different ways you can get around it without the Mighty Vac, but still this is a good tool to have in your bag, and I'll show you just a couple tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. Let's flip the camera around and we'll show you this pretty rad saw. First I got to tear it down and then we will get into it. So first off, just a little disclaimer. People do want to argue on YouTube, and everybody has their own way of doing things. If you're new to the channel, I just want to let you know I am a certified tech. Husky, Steel, Kawasaki, Kohler, Briggs, Honda. I've been around for a long time. Been working on two-strokes over 25 years. I've been managers of shops, owned my own business. I'm not just some schmuck that wants to hear myself talk. So even if someone wants to argue with my methods, I have real-world experience that I can put my reputation on the line, go on YouTube and tell you that my methods work, and that is why I do these videos. I don't do tutorials or instructional videos if I'm not 100% confident in what I'm talking about. So just getting that out of the way. So if you're wondering why it would be important to know how to do a pressure back test or a scenario that it would come in handy, let me tell you something. I pressure back tested every single saw that I serviced when I was a service tech for years. It is going to save you so much time, and I always explain it like this. If you have an air leak, you're going to kill your saw. If you rebuild a saw, you don't know why it failed, and you're assuming this, that, or the other, and it had an air leak, you just did all that work for nothing. It's going to fail again. When saws fail, you need to know why they failed. You cannot visually diagnose an air leak unless you pressure back test it, and then you can visually diagnose it. But you cannot tell that you don't have an air leak without doing a pressure back test. Does that make sense? You have to do an actual pressure back test. You have to fill the saw with air somehow. I'll show you different ways to do it. And if you're not doing it, it's gonna bite you. It really will. You get really fast at it. It'll become routine. It'll save you so much time, so much money. And it is very important to know how to do. So if you do this for a living and you haven't been explained this stuff, I would really pay attention to this video. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I do this stuff because I had to learn on the fly for most of my professional career, and when I was young, just wrecking everything that I worked on. But if I would have had someone that explained this to me, like I'm about to, it would have just helped me out immensely. So if this is your thing, this will be a pretty valuable video for you. So here we go. As far as the Mighty Vac kit, if you ordered one, it's probably going to be different than this. I've had this quite a while. The most important part is the hand pump here. This is different than a leak down test. I'll be real clear on that. A pressure back test, you're testing crankcase pressure and that it's sealed. Your crank seals, base gasket, intake manifold, all that stuff. So just know that a leak down test, totally different thing. This is we're just pumping this up to around 7 PSI pressure and vacuum. I got a bunch of special fittings. I was a steel tech for years, and some of these work really nice to plug off the intake. You remove the carb, and I don't have one for the 880 084, so I made this spacer a while back, and it'll work just fine. So it's kind of a combination of having the right, flanges and spacers and plugs, and just getting creative. I cut apart rubber matting and just machine stuff out. Whatever you got to do to block everything off. So there's two ways you can go about this. You can test through the impulse hose, block everything else off, and test with the fuel tank on, test your impulse hose, your intake manifold, all that stuff. But I prefer a different method. Okay, so this is how I like to attack these things. I like to make sure that the bare bones, the guts of the saw are sealed tight. So this saw's got a lot of crazy stuff going on. It's got a two-piece head. It's got thread inserts, so I have 1/4 inch by 20 bolts in it. I had to mill this out and fabricate a piece of aluminum to go in here. So I eliminated the old style decomp, and you know, who knows what to expect with this. So I did find a plate that it's a steel block off plate, and you know, a piece of rubber that plug that off. I'm using the intake manifold, which might get swapped out on this, so I might have to make a whole intake bracket. But instead of trying the decomp, because they always leak, trust me guys, they always leak, I'm just going to put a decomp plug in it. No spark plug. I'm putting a piston stop with a grommet in it, so I know that's sealed off. I know this is sealed off. You know, everything is good. This is gonna, if I have any leaks, it's gonna be either seals or, you know, because this crankcase was trenched. I have JB Weld over here because, you know, and it's on purpose. This crankcase is matched to the lowers, it trenched. You know, there's a lot of work going on in this saw. So something like this, you could have some serious air leaks. Now, with that, this is pretty important, I feel, and I don't know if other people mention this, but I always start with pressure. The reason I do that is because you're spraying soapy water. A lot of soap, Dawn dish soap, and water. This is not extreme green, so just know that. If you drench your saw with soapy water and then you do a vacuum test and you haven't made sure that you're sealed off yet, it's gonna suck water into the saw. That's a bad day. So especially with something like this with new bearings, new cylinder, all that, you're just going to wreck a saw. So that's why I always do pressure first. 7 PSI for 7 minutes, or as long as, you know, as long as you're holding, then you can spray the soapy water on it. If you're pumping and pumping and pumping, you just can't get any pressure at all. The soapy water sometimes can be hard to tell where your leak is coming from. Trust me guys, I've been in every bad scenario you can think of. Again, doing wild builds, and just I've had all kinds of stuff happen. So if you're just pumping and pumping and pumping, you can't get nothing, you can't get no pressure, trying to one hand this and then spray soapy water on it, you're just getting, you know, annihilated doing that. Fill a tub with water. As long as you're pumping when you put it in the water, you'll be okay, because you're keeping pressure from the inside of the saw going out, and you'll immediately see where your leak is. Then you can address it. So I've seen all kinds of weird stuff, guys. So there we go. We got this thing all basically sealed up, and then here's the moment of truth. And I'll tell you something, guys. I can't believe it. I didn't have a damn air leak in this thing. I can't believe it. So I'm going to throw a decomp in, and I'm going to show you what an air leak looks like. I thought for sure this would leak somewhere, so I could show you guys. That's why I used this saw, but it didn't. So let me show you what an air leak looks like with the soapy water, and then I'll show you how awesome I am, apparently. So let's do it. So here is the advantage of really soapy water. So with the decomp on it, you can see it's pretty obvious. You're not looking for little bubbles. You're looking for, you know, very obvious bubbles. And this is a really slow leak, very slow. If you have a really bad leak, it's tough to even pinpoint it sometimes. So it's dropping about, in that 7-minute span, it would drop probably 3 PSI. So small leak, but still very obvious with really soapy water. So there you go, those damn decomps, huh? So yeah, that was the only leak I had. I'm going to do the tub of water. So even if it's holding, like even if it's holding perfectly on this gauge, I still spray soapy water on it or submerge it to see if there's any tiny leak on it, something like this. This eye is going to run nitrous. It's actually running a wet shot, so it's running fuel and nitrous. And yes, I have pulled, if you're new to the channel, I have already built nitrous saws. This isn't a pipe dream, so it will get done. So this is a pretty ridiculous saw. I want to make sure that, you know, we're not getting a problem here, false reading. I'm going to dunk it in water and make sure that there ain't a single leak in it. So I will throw the Mighty Vac back on it, and we'll get some pressure to it and hold it, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's holding, and we'll spray some water on it, and soapy water, and see what happens. Alright, so we're on pressure. This is pressure. Down is vacuum. So we're on pressure. I'm pumping through the impulse, where the impulse hose goes, and I'm just hooked direct to the crankcase. This is kind of a big case, so it's going to take a bit to pump it up. Plus this, I think my Mighty Vac's getting a little wore out. I feel like Austin Powers joke coming right now. It's not mine, I swear. And We'll go like 6-7 psi. So big crankcase, and I do a newer Mighty Vac pump would pump this up a lot faster. So I don't know if it'll focus on that. So you see we're holding, and 7 minutes is kind of a while. So for TV magic, we'll just kind of miss the soap. And you remember seeing where it was leaking at that decomp before. See bubbles like that? That's not an air leak. That's just from, you know, from the soap. If they form in different spots, that's totally different. I use very soapy water. As you've seen, it'll just bubble like crazy. And when you do, I'm kind of doing this one-handed, so it won't be the easiest, but when you do crank seals, I like to tip the saw over on its side, and then just kind of fill that area with the soapy water, and just spray all over, and you know, set a timer, see where you're at. And in all reality, they told us this in training and stuff, that testing at 7 psi for 7 minutes is like way crazier than anything you're going to see under normal running conditions, except maybe running a 50 shot of nitrous. But along with that, that's kind of a different video, but I actually have to either epoxy or pin the seals in, otherwise the seals will blow across the room when I hit the spray. So as you see, still holding, and we'll come back, and actually I don't even need to do that. It holds, so I already timed this out. But that's what you want to see when you are ready to do the tub test. And it's all in how particular do you want to be, how picky do you want to be, how thorough do you want to be. I always say, if you are charging somebody, this is I'm selling this saw, it's not going to be cheap. So we're going to do this, we're doing this shit right. Forgive my language, I'm not supposed to swear anymore. If you can't tell, I'm trying to do more professional videos, but we're doing this shit right. And to me, to do it right, you need to know that there is 0 leaks. So let's get a tub of water. So you guys probably thought old John here has to go out to the river or go to the well and hand pump. Shit, this is a high-tech shop, guys. I got running water on demand right here, right on tap. Check that out. Fill that up. I even there's my drain, got sewer and water here, guys. So let me fill this bad boy up. Don't got to be filled to the top, obviously, because it's going to be heavier than hell. But I'll be back. Oh boy, a little too full. So that'll be fun moving it, but at least it'll be a good visual. We got Bella here guarding the water. She probably thinks she's getting a bath. But I said before I was going to talk about different things you can do if you don't have a pressure vac tester, a Mighty Vac. You got to be real careful if you're doing this though. You can hook up to an air compressor and use either something that runs through a regulator, or even some of the cylinder leak down testers, you can run just constant pressure through your air compressor, but you got to have your regulator turned way down so you're not pumping 100 psi into the lower end with your seals, because you probably won't find them. But I've seen people use like hand pumps, bicycle hand pumps. Just be aware of how much pressure you're putting into it. I've had one so bad before that I put a cylinder leak down tester on it because the leak was so freaking bad I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And that one actually had a hole in the bottom of the crankcase. It's kind of a long story, but a customer put the wrong bolt in his handle on the bottom side of a Husky, and he just punched right through the freaking crankcase. So that was a bad deal. But yeah. Okay, again, get some pressure to it before you put it in. That's just water dripping off of it from spraying soap and shit all over it. And you want to be damn careful that you don't let this thing go or something. Again, there's going to be air bubbles that come off, and I don't think it hurts these Mighty Vacs. I've done this before quite a few times. So again, I want to be real careful because I do not want this line coming off, but it's on there. But I'm going to rotate it around. See all these air bubbles coming up? That's not air leaking out of it. That's air being trapped under it. Just know that. Once I get all the air bubbles out,
And I know there's gonna be people that are like, I cannot believe he's putting this on the water. It's air. If it's airtight, it's watertight. So again, I have positive pressure on the inside of the saw. God, that water is so freaking cold. I might lose $100 here, guys. I think this thing is just tight as a drum, honestly. There's still some, because on the outside of your saw, you're not, there's water on the outside of the saw. Well, I don't think this thing leaks at all. I don't think it leaks one bit. Somebody should have took that bet. I would have lost $100. Ooh, is that a leak? Okay, so this is like what you would see. Okay, so I think we got a leak somewhere here. Okay, see them little bubbles coming up? That's a air leak. Okay, so you see, I might have to zoom in here. So I knew it. I was gonna say I usually wouldn't lose $100. See right there where that bolt is? So that's crankcase gasket. That'll be a really easy fix. I'll be able to. It could be just that. Actually, I'm just gonna grab a T27 and tighten it up. It might just need to be tightened up. Oh, where is my? Hold on one second. Get it against the sidewall so I can put the force on it and hold my camera with one hand. See that little bit coming out? So there you go. And so if you have an air leak that's on the bottom end, that's where you don't want to have them. Oh, look at this. So I knew my Mighty Vac. Look at the Mighty Vac. It's leaking at the gauge. See that? I knew this thing, there was something going on with it. But there you go. I do have an air leak. That'll be very simple to fix. A little bit of gasket maker and tighten that down a bit, and then I'll recheck it. But there we go. The Mighty Vac needs to be sealed up. See the bubbles coming out right at the gauge there? So I'm glad this worked out like this. So that goes to show you right there that you think that you are completely sealed off, and you're not. You have a tiny air leak. Honestly, will that affect the saw running? Probably not. It's probably not going to do much. But we're going to take care of it. And it's just reassurance to know that your saw is still holding 7 pounds. It's just reassurance to know that your saw is airtight. So let me turn this light off. Another issue I have seen where I got my ass kicked by an air leak was I was getting no air leaks whatsoever, but I had a crankshaft that was bent. It was bent or out of round. So when I would rotate the saw, that's when I finally found it, because the saw kept behaving like it had an air leak, and it was just driving me nuts. But I would pressure back test it and it was fine. And then I rotated the saw. That's why I have this on here, because I do it to every saw now. So I'll rotate the saw, put a 17 in this case on it, spin the crank around, and no joke, that saw, it was a 441 too. It wasn't one of mine, but when I would rotate it, it would get to a certain spot and it would just bloop, it would let out air every single freaking time. But if you didn't move the crankshaft, you never would have known. So before I end this, I will say the vacuum test. Now, I still do a vacuum test, and I'll do it right here quick, but I have never seen a saw that passed a pressure test with flying colors fail a vacuum test. I've never seen it. So that's another reason why I do pressure first. You're safer to do pressure, but my theory is I like to do vacuum after. When I'm all done with the pressure test and the water and all that, I'll do a vacuum test, just because I have this idea in my head that it's sucking. If the seals are starting to get pushed out or anything's starting to get pushed out, it's just going to suck it back into place. And I do a little bit more on the vacuum test. I'll go to like 8 or 9 pounds. So oops, shit. That's still holding. But yeah, that gauge is getting a little moisture in it. So I need to get a new gauge. I'd probably just replace the Mighty Vac, but I have never seen one fail vacuum that passed pressure. So it's just a good idea, I think, to do it at the end. Now, like I said, I doubt it's doing anything, but you never know. It might be sucking the seals back into place. And again, guys, air leaks will destroy saws. They will make them run like garbage. If you depend on your saw, if it's a production saw and you're making your, bread and butter off of it, a shop is probably going to charge you quite a bit. If you're mechanical enough, there's no reason you couldn't do this. So the plugs, you can get decomp plugs on eBay. They actually sell cylinder decomp plugs that have aluminum crush washers on it. It's like your spark plug. And you can put thread tape on your spark plug. You'll find out that spark plugs leak. That's why I don't reuse spark plugs. People think I'm crazy for that. If you use a spark plug and that crush washer gets smashed and you put it on another saw, it leaks like 9 times out of 10. Like that decomp, it's very, very slow, but they do leak. You shouldn't reuse spark plugs. I know they're expensive, but it's just one of those things. So it's kind of cool to see the things that people have done to pressure test them. Here's another one. If you don't have these plates and stuff, you can just take your muffler, just put a thick piece of rubber behind it and use your muffler. Bolt that on. Buy some rubber stoppers at the hardware store, stuff them down the intake manifold, buy some fuel line, just thread tape on your spark plug. You can close these things off with very, very little money. And you don't have to take the fuel tank off and everything. My suggestion, if you have a saw that's just running like garbage, you can't figure it out, you think it's an air leak, just verify that it is an air leak. You don't have to tear it down like I did and do the whole water test to verify it's an air leak. If you plug everything up and you're not getting anywhere with your vacuum, and then you could take it to a shop, you're still saving yourself a lot of trouble, because air leaks kill saws. They kill saws. I've seen it so many times. It's unreal how many times I've seen it. So I hope that helps you guys out. It's something that's very important, not just for high-end crazy builds like this, for rebuilds, for these aftermarket saws, for if you're getting into porting, especially if you're starting to do machining, you're decking cylinders and stuff. You need to know that you have these things airtight. So there you go, guys. Don't always trust the gauge. Always trust the water. Don't ever do a vacuum test first with water on the saw or in a tub of water. Do pressure first. It'll always pass vacuum after. We'll still see that it's still holding. They hold really good on vacuum. And do not run your saw if you think you have an air leak. Address it. Mighty Vacs are cheap. OEM parts aren't. Hope that helps you guys out. Till next time, stay rowdy. Let me know what you think of the new videos. These are more where I'm aimed. And once in a while I'll still do I'm never going to be someone that's lame. I mean, this is a 084 that's lime green powder coated that's running a wet shot of nitrous. So some people are like, oh, I don't like that he's being all technical and stuff. We're running nitrous saws with wet shots, 80 shots. So it's not like I'm ever going to be boring, but I got to try to appeal to everybody with these YouTube videos. So hopefully this wasn't too much rambling. I tried to stick to the points. I'm doing a little bit of rambling now, but let me know what you guys think of the video. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Really?